Alright everyone, now we have to talk about the other side of polling. Right now in the matchups, Trump's doing well. Biden's approval, meanwhile, not so good. It's well, deep underwater. At this point in his presidency, Biden is now averaging about 40 points of approval. For comparison, link in the description, they've got the last few presidents and what their approval rating was at the same time in their first term. Donald Trump was at about 45, so middling, roughly. Obama was in the upper 40s. He was rising up towards 48. He was actually doing fairly well in approval polling. Bush, somehow, that's a little bit of an outlier because I never liked the sucker, but he was at 51 points for what it's worth. You've seen a lowering of approval over time anyway, generically for the presidents, if you look at like the last half a century of polling. And then in the early half of that, it's more sporadic, by the way, so the numbers are a little bit fuzzy. But Biden is the lowest. In fact, I think he's on Carter's level. That does not necessarily mean that he's got a good chance of being reelected. As I've pointed out before, my unique analysis is to look at the disapproval and the approval polling and see when they deviate. See, if one is rising by a point and the other's falling by a point and everything's matching up, it doesn't really matter, statistical noise, etc. aside. If you see, though, what you see with Biden, which is a considerable uptick in disapproval over a period where the approval has dropped more slowly, that is the loss of independent voters. This indicates that people who were on the fence, they didn't necessarily approve of Biden, but they didn't disapprove of him either, have begun to disapprove of him. And if you look at that trend, it's a very long-term trend. It's been happening now for months and months and months that particular very, very linear, very, very tidy aggregate has happened. The departure of the disapproval from the approval numbers shows that it's independent voters mainly that are camping against Biden, which couldn't be worse. Donald Trump, according to one recent poll, had a 20-point advantage with independent voters. I don't trust single polls. I would like more meat on them bones, but it's believable. It's believable that there will be a gap. I think that independents will break for Trump in the 24 election. I think that you may see a spectacularly funny moment where Trump is almost matching with Hispanic voters. I think that he's gained double digits among black voters. I think that he probably is capable of winning among suburban female voters. Oftentimes people say, well, this election will be decided by suburban women. And therefore, we need Nikki Haley, because clearly, suburban female voters will only vote for you if you have the same genitals that they do. I don't believe that. I think that Trump can run almost a clean sweep, demographically speaking. Hell, he's competitive among millennial voters. One of the far-left voting blocs of all time is almost leaning in Trump's direction now, the 30-something voters that I'm part. I'm 36. Millennials, by and large, had been very, very left-leaning up until around 2016, and now there's been a massive double-digit shift in the other direction. It doesn't mean they're becoming Republicans. If anything, the undecideds, the independent voting bloc, is now by far the largest in the United States. Party loyalty is dying, which I think is actually a good thing, not a bad thing. But Biden's approval is weighing around the entire party's neck like a millstone. The problem for the Democrats is that any id poll or back burner issues they can astroturf, so abortion or something like that, become meaningless if the person who is the standard bearer of your party is so unpopular. Trump's popularity is higher than Biden's. One of the big selling points the Democrats used to crow about constantly was, well, Trump is more disliked than Joe is. Well, that's no longer the case. That's no longer true. That has been inverted by a few points in the last few months. And there are three main glaring reasons why. The first is the economy. The economy is big on people's minds because they pump their own gas and buy their own groceries. I still get sticker shock. Look, I'm kind of making it in life. I make a decent amount of money. I make a decent living doing this. I still get sticker shock when I go to the store. It is bad. I can go to the fucking Dollar General, one of the cheaper stores. I still get sticker shock. Oh, $4 for a Monster Energy drink? It used to be $1.99. Thank you, Joe. Real cool. Thank you for forcing me to pay so much money in order to keep working at all. If it weren't for the caffeine, I wouldn't have the power to fucking keep going. I need enough caffeine so that I can I don't even need to cook my food anymore. I just swallow raw meat and it just metabolizes anyway. That's the way I want to live my life. Short but fun, basically. Speaking of caffeine, I'm my second one already. Anyway, and that's number one, the economy. Number two is the border crisis. Well, there's no attempt to solve it. The Republicans, by the way, walking into a trap by okaying that border bill. If they okay the border bill, then again, they're handed a win. The American people are pissed about the border, but then you look at the bill and it's like, oh yeah, Secretary of State can arbitrarily define anyone that they want as an asylum seeker, so you're never going to hit that 10,000 person a day or whatever it is threshold. All future cases against the bill adjudicated in D.C., about the most left-leaning place you can possibly get. Okay. And, let's see. Oh yeah, only $20 billion of that $118 billion is actually going to the border anyway. So, ta-da, it solves absolutely nothing. The Republicans are stupid if they pass it, if they vote in favor of it. It looks like they have the votes in the Senate to pass it. Now we just have to look and see whether the House holds rank, basically, the House Republicans. So number 2 is the border, and that problem ain't going anywhere. The Republicans can punch themselves in the face, but at this point, I don't know that they can even do that hard enough to make up the difference. I still think the Democrats will be suffering a deficit on that issue. And third is diplomacy. Foreign issues. It's become a big thing. You've got numerous wars that we're involved in, indirectly. You've got numerous potential wars we could get involved in. And people are laying the blame at Biden's feet, which is proper. He's the so-called commander-in-chief. He's the head diplomat of the United States. His weakness and his fence-sitting and his indecisiveness has led to numerous wars breaking out, which have robbed the people of the United States now of hundreds of billions of dollars that we've sent to other countries. Massive, massive amounts of money. Do you realize how many homeless shelters you could have built with that? How big the wall at the southern border could be by now? Hell, you could have replaced the whole fucking thing with the bollard. You'd be creating the next layer of defense. You'd put some fucking auto turrets on it or something like that. Make a little no man's land or whatever the hell you want to do. You could use atomic weapons and build a moat from sea to shining sea, probably, and fucking fill it with crocodiles and sharks and shit like that for the amount of money that we've sent Ukraine alone. Instead, we prefer to bomb a bunch of people. It's very helpful, by the way. I'm glad to know that when I pay tens of thousands of dollars to Uncle Sam in this tax season, that most of it's going to go to bombing Yemenis and shit like that, as opposed to housing someone who's homeless, helping someone who's addicted, or something, putting more food in the poor families' pantries or something like that, and expand WIC or something like that. Those things I actually support. I sound like, to the ANCAPs out there, I probably sound like a bleeding heart liberal, but at least it's not being used to kill people. I'd rather keep the money at home. I think that's more conducive to a good economy. But Biden doesn't understand economics. And his economic advisors apparently don't either. Of course, they're the ones really calling most of the shots. When he does weigh in, I bet people they sit there nervously. Biden says something like zany that doesn't quite make sense. And everyone starts sweating a little bit and adjusting their ties and their collars. And like, we need to talk after the big dude is left. After the big guy leaves the room, we need to have a frank conversation. Well, no wonder shit's fucked up. No wonder his approval is so low. Again, that deviation between disapproval and approval, though, the deviation of the velocity of the loss and the gain on those numbers is the most meaningful statistic that nobody else is paying attention to. Those are millions of independent voters. They're not Democrats, they're not Republicans, they're independents. No wonder they're leaning towards Trump. I'm having a field day with the 2024 numbers, trust me. That's about all. Peace out.